It may just be a peaceful landscape of rolling hills today, but for over 40 years during the height of the Cold War, this place was said to be the potential battleground for World War III. It was called Fulda Gap.
We're standing here at the hottest spot of German history, of European history. If you see this tower, at this tower East German military border troops were positioned. The border was going right there to this white pole, so you were standing facing eye to eye with each other. NATO and Warsaw Pact troops were looking at each other only 2 meters apart, here at this point.
The fear was that Soviet troops would invade West Germany and US-led NATO troops, numbering some 400,000, would retaliate. And the bigger fear that nuclear weapons would be used, devastating not only Germany but all of Western Europe. This, of course, never happened, but almost 27 years after the collapse of the Iron Curtain, this memorial serves as a reminder of the American presence once here and the gratefulness felt by many for a US military ready to defend Europe. Ricarda Steinbach worked as a public affairs officer with the US troops for 24 years, during which she would come here almost on a daily basis.
This was Bush, Gorbachev and Kohl.
What does this remind you of when you come up here?
It reminds me of the duty the American soldiers carried out here on the tower, for example, that they were watching for 24 hours the area which you can see right now, and what they contributed actually to our peace and freedom. As long as they were here, the Western people, they could sleep well at night.
But with the world's eyes glued on this man, sleeping well at night could get a little bit harder. Donald Trump has made it no secret that when it comes to security, Europe needs to do more.
I will make a long statement about NATO, talking about the fact that many countries are not paying their fair share. That means we are protecting them, and they are getting all sorts of military protection and other things. And they're ripping off the United States, and they're ripping you off. I don't care. I don't want to do that. Either they pay up, including for past deficiencies, or they have to get out. And if it breaks up NATO, it breaks up NATO.
For Trump, it's payback time for all the years the US sheltered Europe during the Cold War. He has stated the fact that only 4 out of NATO's 28 members pay the required 2% of their GDP in defense. But how do his European allies feel about this and him?
Here in Berlin, like throughout most of Europe, the very idea of the next US president being Donald Trump seems almost surreal, like a big joke. But not everyone is laughing.
Especially when it comes to Trump ready to break up NATO, which has been the foundation of the transatlantic alliance since 1949. Judy Dempsey has been covering NATO and European security and foreign policy issues since the Cold War.
Trump's comments that NATO allies, the Europeans particularly, have to pay their fair share, that's true. But frankly, it's nothing new. Successive American administrations have said the same thing. And actually, since the Russian invasion of Crimea and in eastern Ukraine, the Europeans are improving a little. As for NATO being obsolete, well, what would the Americans do with their coalitions of the willing, like-minded allies? What would they do with the NATO alliance that sees the threats and the challenges facing not only the United States but Europe as well? So to say that NATO is obsolete is like saying that the transatlantic alliance that was built up after 1945 on the ruins of a destroyed Europe, that it's over.
For Hillary Clinton, Trump's comments on NATO are yet another in the long list of reasons she says Trump is unfit to lead the so-called free world. But despite the praise for NATO and its allies, she's given less concrete details than Trump on its future.
We've got to do everything we can to vacuum up intelligence from Europe, from the Middle East. That means we've got to work more closely with our allies. And that's something that Donald has been very dismissive of. We're working with NATO, the longest military alliance in the history of the world, to really turn our attention to terrorism.
After World War II, the US Marshall Fund poured billions of dollars to help rebuild Europe and to solidify the transatlantic alliance. The Marshall Fund still exists today.
Is there concern that even if Trump doesn't win, that there's been some damage to the transatlantic alliance?
I don't know about damage. Trump has expressed extreme views, and people are aware of that. But there is an acknowledgement that if Hillary Clinton becomes president, she will also expect a certain change in course when it comes to Europeans putting in more of a financial support behind collective security in NATO, taking on more of a responsibility when it comes to dealing with global challenges. So I do think that there is an expectation that things will be different.
There's little doubt that on both sides of the Atlantic, NATO's raison d'etre is not what it was when Europe was divided. But for some Europeans, regardless of who will be the next president, the ties that bind will always be there.
But you feel still very pro-American.
I will always stand up for the Americans, always. You can ask some politicians here, as soon as the word Americans is said, I get a little bit aggressive. I defend them.